Welcome everybody. Dear students, you are welcome for Dr. Mirza Shahid Beg Edu channel. That is, Edu means the educational channel. And today's topic of our discussion is diuretics. Diuretics are the drugs that increases the flow of urine. Diuretics promotes the removal of excess water, salt, poisons and accumulated metabolic products also, such as urea from the body. They serve to rid the body of excess fluid, which we call it as edema, you can say, that accumulates in the tissue owing to the various disease states. Further, in the further discussion, we will discuss what are the disease states that produces the edema in the body. So, diuretics are also used for having overdose or poisoning situation, like for example acetazolamide help to make the urine more alkaline and are helpful in increasing excretion of substances such as aspirin in case of overdose or poisoning, you can say. Many people, diuretics are sometimes abused by these people, like eating disorder with the goal of losing weight. So diuretics are such a class where in a single form it may be overcome various conditions, especially in the hypertension. If the hypertension is due to the accumulation of fluid in the body where the blood volume increases and the blood pressure increases, alone in some condition of hypertension these diuretics are very effective, or sometimes it may be combined with the other drugs to treat the different conditions in the body. So it's a very useful topic, and it's very easy way we have taken this for the preparation of your educational purpose, for exam purpose, for competitive exam purpose, you can say. And even when you are going for the interviews, you can refer this topic. So before going for the discussion, first we will have the normal discussion, like as this topic is dealing with water or fluid control of our body. First we'll go with the role and importance of water in our body. Then we will discuss what complication occurs if fluid starts accumulating in the body, and why we require this diuretic drugs. So getting on to the topic, like water percentage of body, as we see that the water is a basic need of our life, you can say, right from the fetus condition, as you see in the figure. Right from the fetus condition to the elder person, you can see the importance of water percentage in the body. Like fetus, which is there in the mother's womb, you can say, it is having 90% of water. And as it grows, okay, it becomes child, so 80% of water, then it becomes adult, that is a life cycle, you can say. 60% of water is there in the body, and when it is going to the decline phase of the age, that is elder person, it becomes only 50%. So with the age, if you see, the water level is declining. Okay, so this is general importance, that how the water percentage is there in the human body. Then we go for understanding the importance of water, as this topic is dealing with the fluid, you can say, balance in the body. Not much fluid should be there, not less fluid should be there. So what role this water plays in the body? So the body needs water to perform all the following functions, like water enables, first one, the water enables hydrolysis, a vital process of metabolism. As you know very well that hydrolysis is a phase 1 metabolic process, where in the phase 1 oxidation, reduction and hydrolysis are coming. So hydrolysis, many body nutrients, many body vital metabolic products are formed by the hydrolysis, you can say. And many drugs also are getting hydrolyze in the body. So this water in the body which is present, it initiate the chemical reaction called the hydrolysis. The polar groups which are there in the drug or the biomolecules, you can say, where the water enables the hydrolysis in the body, and the metabolism occurs, you can say, and it is converted to the less harmful metabolites in the body. So it's a very important one, that hydrolysis process is required in the body, and it is controlling the various mechanisms or metabolic processes in the body. Next we see the regulating of body temperature. See, body temperature should be maintained, as you know very well. Okay, if it gets higher, the person becomes weak, and the person is having illness, you can say. So our water of the body plays a very important role by controlling the body temperature also. Like for example, sweating occurs on the body. Okay, if you feel body heat get increases, or if you go in the sun also, or sunlight also, or if a fan is not there in the house, you can say whatever, so your body temperature gets rises, and suddenly you have the sweating on the body, sweating on the face, sweating on the body, you can say. So this sweating makes the cooling effect on the body and maintain your body temperature to lower down. So this is what the water is playing a very important role in regulating the body temperature also. Next is the lubricating of the joints. As you know very well, that joints are bending, you can say, you can have free movement, you can say. So this lubrication of the joints are very much made by the waters of hydrated effect in the body, you can say. If it is lower or dehydration occur, your joints are also paining because they get stiff, they are unable to bend, you can say. So this is lubricating of the joints are also depending on the water level of the body. Okay, so next is the moistening tissues in the mouth, eyes and nose. It's very important because they are exposed to the environment, they are exposed to the air, you can say, and suddenly slowly, you can say, the water level is what getting evaporated. But our body cell system is such that it is continuously hydrating this organs, you can say. Like mouth, we required water, saliva in our body, you can say. So that is the lubrication of our mouth. If it is absent, the person may die also due to the dryness of the mouth, you can say, or rashes may occur, etc. Eyes, the blinking of the eyes, the water is there. If it gets dry eyes, you know very well, it becomes redness in the eyes, and it is having a very painful condition in the eyes also. Nose also you required because it's a exhalation and inhalation process which is going on. So for respiration, you are taking the air inside and exhaling out, you can say. For that we require the moistening of the nose cells also. So this is a very important one. It's a natural where the God has kept this water level in the body. Next we go for dissolve nutrients and make them accessible in the bloodstream. The food which we take, the various essential nutrients, they are water soluble. So if enough water is there in the body, they get solubilized and it is freely available to the blood stream, you can say, or blood, you can say. Next is the distribution of the nutrients and oxygen to the cell. This is a very important one. After dissolution of the nutrients or requirements of the body, and even the oxygen, which is a very important one, without oxygen we can't live. So that is also in the dissolved form in the fluid of the body, you can say. That is water and blood, and it is available, distributed, because the blood is continuously in the circulation. It goes to each and every cell of your body that requires the nutrient, that requires the oxygen. They take it for their functioning, you can say, and they perform various functions. They take the energy, etc. Many electron transport mechanisms also occurring. So this is the requirement where water is playing a very important role here. Next is help flushing out the waste product. As everybody knows that whatever you take inside the body, after utilization of the body, the extra material, the extra quantity has to be removed from the body. Otherwise, if it remains in the body, it is not removing, it becomes toxic to the body, you can say. So many waste products, the metabolic waste products, the body which is continuously producing the harmful biomolecules also, this water take them along with it and flush out in the kidneys in the form of urine, and the person is having a healthy life, you can say. So in other words, you can say nearly everything that the body does requires the water. This is the importance of the water, you can say, because this diuretic chapter, as it is dealing with the fluid balance, you are removing the water from the body, you can say. So this type of the effect, or this importance of water, you can say, or need of water of the body, you can say, it should not be affected. So that is why we have taken these slides. So first we know the importance of water in the body, because side effects which are associated with the diuretic class of drugs, it is mainly affecting this type of the organs in the body, you can say. So next we go for the fluid retention in the body. We have seen the water level of the body, we have seen the importance of water in the body. Now if the fluid is not removing from the body, it is start accumulating in the body, what will happen? What are the different conditions which arises due to the accumulation of the water? So here the excess water retention in the body leads to the following condition. Like first is the pulmonary edema. So pulmonary edema is a condition caused by excess fluid in the lungs. This fluid collects in the numerous air sacs in the lungs, you can say, make it difficult to breathe. In most cases, heart problem causes pulmonary edema. Other causes may be there, like pneumonia, exposure to the certain toxins and drugs. So in short, the accumulation, fluid accumulation in the lungs, you can say it's a pulmonary edema, which is a very critical condition. Sometimes it becomes, and many patients in the ICU, those who are having the pulmonary edema, may be very much liable for the pneumonitis, you can say, and various type of the bacterial infections where the high temperature is running. So a critical condition becomes. So this is what the first case, where the water starts accumulating. It is not removing from the body by the natural processes, or it is just in the body, you can say. So it is the pulmonary edema. Next is the peripheral edema. Peripheral edema is nothing but the swelling in the hands, feet, ankle and legs. So here the peripheral edema, accumulation of the fluid causing swelling in the tissue perfused by the peripheral vascular system, usually in the lower limbs or hands, just now we have seen. The cause may be simple, such as sitting for too long on a plane or standing for too long, or it may be involve a more serious underlying disease condition like renal failure, and all that we will see further. So this is a peripheral edema may occur. The swelling on the body starts coming out, you can say. So this is how the peripheral edema may occur. Next is the hypertension. Hypertension, as we know that the normal blood pressure of a human body is 120/80. You can say it's a normal one, which is having average 5 to 6 liter or 8 to 10 liters of blood in the body, you can say. So it's not normally going on, but if suddenly the fluid starts accumulating in the blood, the blood volume increases, where there is a load on heart also, which causes heart to pump the fluid, or increase body volume, you can say, of the blood, you can say. And the peripheral resistance is also there, which leads to the hypertensive condition. So fluid retention in the body leads to the hypertension, especially the essential hypertension also occurs in this condition. Next is the congestive heart failure. If fluid accumulates in the body, the congestive heart failure occurs, which we call it as a CHF. Is a chronic progressive condition that affect the pumping power of your heart muscles. while often referred to as simply heart failure. You may call it as a heart failure also. So here this is a stage in which the fluid build up around the heart and cause it to pump inefficiently. Okay, your body is not pumping properly, you can say, in this condition. And in this congestive heart failure, your heart volume means the size is suddenly in the progressive manner, it is increasing. The ventricles are increasing like a balloon. If you fill the water in the balloon, it gets elongated. Like the same condition is there for the congestive heart failure also. Slowly it is a progressive one. So blood backs up in your blood vessels, which causes fluid retention in your lower extremities, abdomen, and the vital organs, you can say. So it may occur CHF. It's possible to have left-sided and right-sided CHF, congestive heart failure. At the same time, usually the disease start in the left side and then travel to the right when left untreated. So this is what the condition which is going on for the heart failure, where the fluid accumulation getting started, and due to which the congestive heart failure also occurs in the body, you can say. Weight gain, next is the weight gain. About the weight gain, you can say unexplained rapid weight gain may be the result of fluid retention. Suddenly there is no you have a sudden increase in your weight of the body, you can say. It is also not good. People with heart failure, kidney diseases, liver diseases, or those taking certain medications may experience this type of the weight gain. So the fluid accumulation, as it increases the volume of the body, you can say, so some people are having the weight gain, and that is what the sign of the fluid retention in the body also. Bloating, mainly in the abdominal area, where your belly feels swollen after eating, you can say, like this effect, which is called as a bloating. Eating salty food or having food intolerance and experiencing change in the hormone levels can also cause a person's body to retain more fluid than it would be otherwise. So bloating is where your body is retaining the fluid in the abdomen area, and it is having like a belly, or your belly swollen type of the effect you get. So this is what the condition where the fluid retention lead to the bloating also. Puffiness of the abdomen, face, and hips. Puffiness means there is a softness like a sponge and all that. So it is making the puffin. If you wake up in the morning after a sweet sleep, you can say, some people, they have puffiness below their eyes. That is what the puffy type of the effect. So puffiness is occurring due to the fluid retention in the body. This is what happens when the fluid gets retained. Lastly is the stiff joint. Just now we have discussed that water produces lubrication, and it is having the effect in the body, you can say. But much fluid retention, which is containing the acidosis type of the effect, or carbonic acid, you can say, or bicarbonate ions, you can say, which lead to the gout type of the effect, and you are having due to the fluid in the body, higher fluid in the body, you get the difficulty in bending of your joints. This is called as the stiff joints. You are unable to bend it due to the fluid accumulation in the body, you can say. So these are all conditions. These conditions, some are not much effective, means they are not serious, you can say, but sometimes it becomes some conditions like CHF, hypertension, and pulmonary edema. It becomes very critical to treat. Even it's a life and death type of the situation it becomes when the fluid gets retained in the body. So this is how we have seen the importance of the water to the body, it required for the body. But at the same time, if it starts retaining in the body, it is not removing, extra material is not removing. We have used the word, if the extra thing remains in the body for longer period of time, it becomes toxic to the body. So fluid retention may produces many effects in the body, and that is what leads to the use of diuretics. That is what the condition or that is what our topic of discussion today, that is what are diuretics. We have seen already the definition. Again we can go through. Diuretic is any substance that promote the diuresis, that is the increased urine production in the body, or from the body you can say. The increased production of urine is excreted out, that is what the water which is accumulated, the fluid which is accumulated by these drugs, this urine, in the form of urine, it is removed from the body. This include forced diuresis. Of course, these drugs when given, the patient is having much urine formation, and it is a forced diuresis on the body you can say. There are several categories of diuretics. In this chapter, we'll see different categories, various categories, and each and every category is working in its own way. All diuretic increases the excretion of water from the bodies, although each class does so in a distinct way. So all drugs acts, or classes you can say, act in a different way, different sites you can say. So we will see what are the different sites of action also for the diuretics. Next we go for the therapeutic uses of diuretics. So here where the diuretic class is used, as we have seen that this is a very important class. In some cases it becomes, when the situation becomes life threatening, okay, here the diuretics becomes very effective you can say. So many uses are there. Alone also diuretics are very effective drugs in some condition, not all, and in combination also it is given to overcome the different type of the conditions you can say. So some conditions we have taken, like for example, diuretics are effectively used in the following condition, like first essential hypertension. As we have discussed, you can call the essential hypertension as primary hypertension also, where there is no underlying condition or secondary disease condition. Suddenly the fluid accumulates and your blood pressure increases of the body. So in this condition, when the swelling occurs, swelling on the legs you can say, swelling on the body you can say, it is visualized. In this condition, the diuretic alone can have a very good effect in the treating hypertension, or otherwise it may be combined with the other drugs like a beta blocker class is there, or ACE inhibitors are there, or angiotensin 2 receptor inhibitors are there. So it is combined to treat the essential hypertension you can say. Next condition where the diuretics are used is the congestive heart failure. As we have seen, what is congestive heart failure? So continuous load on the heart you can say, because of the fluid accumulation in the blood, okay, and continuously it is coming on to the heart you can say, and heart is inefficient to pump that load you can say. Preload you can consider. Preload increases and after load gets decreases in the congestive heart failure you can say. So suddenly slowly the increase in the size or ventricles gets increases in small elongated you can say in the congestive heart. So if the fluid is accumulated, diuretics are very effective in this condition. So they helps the other drugs of the congestive heart failure to work properly and removing some fluid you can say. So next is the hepatic cirrhosis. It's a very hepatic cirrhosis, where it is also called as the liver cirrhosis, is a condition in which liver does not function properly due to the long-term damage to the liver cells. This damage is characterized by replacement of normal liver tissues by the scar tissues you can say. So you can say it's a damage to the hepatic cells, and swelling may occur on the hepatic cells also you can, or liver you can say. Typically the disease develops slowly over months or year also. The metabolic waste accumulate in the body. The fluid is accumulating in the body, metabolic waste product increases. So we have to remove this condition or metabolic waste product or urea or fluid from the body, so that our body gets normalized for the this one therapeutic uses for the liver cirrhosis you can say. Next we go for the nephritic syndrome. Nephritic syndrome, diuretics are used very well in this condition. This is the nephritic syndrome is the condition name given to the collection of different signs and symptoms that occur as a result of inflammation in the kidneys. This inflammation causes the kidneys to work less effective. It also causes protein and red blood cells to leak from the bloodstream into the urine, you can say. That means blood is coming in the urine. So this is the situation where it becomes very critical sometimes, because it's not good that the blood is coming in the urine, you can say. You may get anemia and all that condition. So flushing up with the diuretics along with the antibiotics are also useful in some cases. Antibiotics are also given due to the infection condition or whatever the things are there, and along with that the diuretic, the fluid which is accumulated, because the kidneys functioning gets affected, so that accumulated fluid is taken out by the diuretics, you can say. So next we go for the chronic renal failure. Here chronic renal failure, or you may call it as a chronic kidney diseases also, CKD, which we call it in the short form, chronic kidney disease, where there is a slow and progressive decline of kidney function. It usually a result of complication from another serious medical conditions such as diabetes or high blood pressure or cardiovascular disease. So due to which the fluid is getting accumulated as your kidneys are not functioning, because kidneys are the natural organs of you can say for filtration and taking out our body fluids, you can say. So as it is not working, so fluid starts accumulating, and where the diuretics are effective, so these drugs remove, in this condition they remove the fluid from the body and make a person in a normal way, you can say. Next is the acute oligouric renal failure. Oliguria is a condition where daily urine volume of less than 400 ml and has a worse prognosis, you can say. So if a person is not having urine, you can say urine output, you can say it is given as 400 ml less than that quantity, so it is called as the acute oligouric renal failure. So what happens, this fluid is getting accumulated in the blood, accumulated in the body, you can say, where there is a complication and leading to the different condition. So these diuretics are effective to remove the fluid from the body and overcome the acute oligouric renal failure also. Next is the acute glomerulonephritis. Here, this is a condition where inflammation and acute damage of the glomeruli leading to a hematuria. Hematuria means the blood is coming in the urine. It is called as the hematuria. Proteinuria, protein are coming in the urine, and azotemia. It may be caused by primary renal disease or systemic condition like infection. If infection occurs, okay, it may lead to the acute glomerulonephritis condition. Again, when the diuretics are given, it is flushing up with the diuretics along with the antibiotics are sometimes useful in this condition also. Next we go for the cerebral edema. Cerebral edema is when the fluid build up around the brain, causing an increase in the pressure of the brain. So this is what the things called as the cerebral edema, that is increased accumulation of the fluid, you can say, in the brain. Next is the glaucoma condition. Glaucoma is a group of eye conditions that damages the optic nerve, the health of which is vital for the good vision. This damage is often caused by abnormal high pressure in your eyes, or glaucoma is one of the leading cause of the blindness for people over the age of 60. So this is due to the fluid retention. Again, when you give the diuretic, it removes the fluid from the eyes and related part, you can say, and it overcome the intraocular pressure and it normalize the patient, you can say. So this, in this condition also, many eye drops are available. We will see further for the glaucoma condition also. Next is the intraocular refractive surgery, or intraocular surgery also you can call. Okay, is performed inside the eyes. This is a type of a surgery which is performed inside the eyes as opposed to on the cornea, you can say, like refractive lens exchange. Your exchange of the lens is there inside your eyes, where the many patients, they are unable to see properly, or blurred vision is there, or two images they see if the lens get affected, you can say. This type of a surgery, so it occurs intra-refractive surgery, you can say, due to which surgery, the fluid accumulation if occurs in that part of the eyes, you can say, it may affect the surgery also, or it may lead to the wounds also. So this is how the diuretics helps to overcome or save the eyes, you can say, from having the development of intraocular pressure. Next and the last thing what we have taken for the uses of diuretics is the diabetes insipidus. It's a uncommon disorder that causes an imbalance of the fluid in the body. This imbalance make you very thirsty even if you have or had some things to drink, you can say. That means in this condition, a large volume of the water is what taken by the patient, you can say, but it feels thirsty also. Then also it feels thirsty. So this is how it leads to the produce a large amount of urine also, hence a disorder of salt and water metabolism marked by intense thirst and heavy urination. So this is a critical condition, you can say, that diabetes insipidus occur when the body can't regulate how it handles the fluid. The condition is caused by hormonal abnormalities and isn't related to diabetes. Yeah, this is the important point. It isn't related to the diabetes, you can say. So in addition to extreme thirst and heavy urination, other symptoms may include getting up at night to urinate, or bedwetting, you can say. So these all things, all conditions is of the diabetes insipidus. Your body mechanism, you can say, it's not working properly. So this is how the general therapeutic uses of the diuretics, all the classes of the diuretics we have discussed in common uses, we can say. For specific condition, a specific class of drug is also used. We will see in the further slides, where you are having the separate use also, in which condition which class is very effective. Like this way we have taken. So this is what general that you should remember, that diuretics are used in which type of the conditions, you can say, effectively, and they overcome the conditions sometimes. Okay, now we go for the site of action. As we have stated that there are many classes of diuretics, and each and every class act by the different way. Okay, it's not such that all diuretics acts on the same side or same panel, you can say. It is every drug, because here what the chemistry comes across, here what the role of medicinal chemistry, here what the role of structure of the drug is there, which is having the peculiarity of where it should act, which channel to be inhibited, where the exchange to be inhibited, etc. So if you see in a general way to remember and simplify the topic, you can say, I have taken this diagram, site of action of different diuretics. So if you see the first one, that is carbonic anhydrase inhibitors, that is acetazolamide, it is mainly acting on the proximal convoluted tubule. Okay, the first position, you can say. Next we have the bumetanide or furosemide, torsemide, or ethacrynic acid. Okay, so this loop diuretics, they act mainly on the descending loop of Henle as well as the ascending loop of Henle. So loop of Henle, they are having a good working, you can say, or having the site of action. So that is why they are given the name also, the loop diuretics. Next is the thiazide diuretic. It is having the benzothiazide, you can say, as a nucleus. So this thiazide diuretic, especially they act on the distal convoluted tubule. Okay, so and the last one, that is spironolactone, amilorate, triamterene, which are potassium sparing diuretics, you can say. They are mainly acting on the collecting tubule and duct of the glomerular system. So this is very easy. Only one side on this figure you can remember the site of action of different diuretics, you can say, because in many competitive exams also, even in the mechanism of action, you will see for this drug, you are having this type of the questions are asked for the MCQs, like carbonic anhydrase inhibitors are acting on which side of the glomerular system, you can say. So you can have the different options will be given. So like this way you can remember in the site of a different action also of the different diuretics. Next we go for the classification of diuretic drugs. So here if you see many drugs are there, some drugs we have taken as an example, you can say. So here the classes are there with the name, like first one, the osmotic diuretics. Osmotic diuretics like glycerin, isosorbite, mannitol, sorbitol, urea, these are the drugs which comes across in the osmotic diuretics. We will see each and every class in the further discussion. So here we look first on the classification of diuretic. So first class is the osmotic diuretic we have taken, and these are the examples. Very short structures are also there, we will see further. Carbonic anhydrase inhibitors, the second class. Okay, so here the famous drugs, acetazolamide, dorzolamide, methazolamide, dichlorphenamide. Okay, so many drugs are there. So this come across in the carbonic anhydrase inhibitors. Next class is thiazide diuretics, benroflu, methiazide, benzthiazide, chlorothiazide, hydrochlorothiazide, the famous drug which is having much use in the combination for the treatment of hypertension, hydroflumethiazide, many other drugs are there. Next class is thiazide like diuretics. Here they are called as thiazide diuretics. Why they are called this thiazide like, we will see in the further discussion also. For short discussion, so that you can remember how they are different from the thiazide diuretics. Actually these drugs, thiazide like diuretics, they are having same pharmacological action or same type of mechanism of action, side effects as that of the benzothiazide, benzthiazide, thiazide diuretic, you can say, but they are structurally different. They are different in structure. They are not containing the thiazide nucleus, a benzothiazidine nucleus, you can say. So that is why they are called as thiazide like diuretics. The famous example, chlorthalidone, indapamide, metazolone, and cunethazone. So this four drugs you can remember for the thiazide like diuretic. And why they are called as thiazide like diuretic, that also in a simple in a short way we have understood here. Again we will see in the further slides. Next is the loop diuretics. They are also called as high ceiling diuretics. They are very strong diuretic. Out of all the diuretics, this loop diuretic are called as the high ceiling diuretic. They are very strong in diuretic effect, you can say. Bumetanide, the famous drug, ethacrynic acid, furosemide, torsemide, these are all drugs which are coming in the loop diuretic. And the last one we can categorize this as a potassium sparing diuretic. For your remembrance, I have taken the two classification for this. First is the aldosterone antagonist, because it is inhibiting the hormone that is called the aldosterone in the body, you can say, or it is also called as mineralocorticoid receptor antagonist. Okay, two famous drug, amlodipine and spironolactone. And candrinone is a metabolic product of the spironolactone, you can say, which is also given separately. So here they are aldosterone antagonists. We will see the mechanism, what aldosterone role it plays in the body, and how these drugs are inhibiting that aldosterone receptors, you can say. Next, the last one, potassium sparing diuretic, amilorate and triamterene. So these two drugs which are very famous and useful in the treatment. So it's a complete classification of diuretic. Only one side on this classification you can remember as many drugs which are very important for as a diuretics, you can say, and you can have the further discussion. Now we go for the discussion of our classes. Okay, now osmotic diuretic, we will discuss here what the importance of the osmotic diuretic is there, mechanism of action, side effect of the class of drugs, you can say, and even I have taken the drug interaction, because many students, they are preparing for the competitive exams, so that they can remember the drug interaction. Some drug interactions also we have taken, so that will be the pattern of our study of this topic, you can say. So first one, if we go for osmotic diuretic, as the name indicate, osmotic. Okay, so how they produces diuretic effect in the body, that we will see. An osmotic diuretic is a type of diuretic that inhibit reabsorption of water and sodium. Okay, they are pharmacologically inert substance that are given intravenously. Okay, so this is a very good one, that they are pharmacologically inert one. Okay, so how they produces the diuretic effect in the body then? So osmotic diuretic work by expanding the extracellular fluid and plasma volume, therefore increasing the blood flow to the kidneys, as they are not initiating any other effect in the body, you can say. So what they do, they increases the extracellular volume and the blood flow to the kidneys. As soon as it go to the kidneys, it is what flush out very easily, you can say. Okay, without the effect of whether the sodium is coming out or not, you can say. It is as it creates a osmotic pressure or osmolarity of the blood, you can say, increasing. So this will drain out the fluid, along with it whatever the extra fluid is there, that also remove, you can say. And this is how it works. They increases the osmolarity of the blood and renal filtrate. So this is how it is getting drained out from the renal filtrate, you can say. They do not cross the blood brain barrier. This does not affect the nervous system. This is also a positive point for the osmotic diuretic, and this is what they are very good to use in the patients in the critical condition also, where it should not or it is not damaging the brain, you can say. General uses, generally this osmotic diuretics means widely used in the conditions like reducing the intracranial pressure and intraocular pressure. We have seen what you mean by intracranial pressure, that is the cerebral edema and all that. They create the fluid accumulation in the brain and all. So this is how it is removing the fluid from the peripheral part. So the fluid which is accumulated in the brain also, it is draining out from the brain, you can say, from, and it is what overcome. So reducing the intracranial and intraocular pressure, like in the glaucoma condition. Okay, so this is very effective drugs in this condition and widely used. For example, some example we have taken with the structure like mannitol is there. You can see the structure, it's very easy. 2 to 3 times if you practice out, you will get this easy structures. So when you are preparing for the examination, especially in the medicinal chemistry, so you have to draw the structures also. So very simple to have this structure. Sorbitol is also there, and isosorbide. Okay, apart from this, glycerin also you can draw, it's very easy. Urea also you can draw, which is coming under the class of osmotic diuretic, you can say. Now we go for the side effects of osmotic diuretic. As we have seen the uses, as we have seen the mechanism of action, how it removes the fluid from the body. Now the side effect, because every drug is having the side effects, so we should know, because many conditions are such that it may be life threatening if it is not you can say examined properly, because we are playing with the volume of the blood, we are playing with the edema condition, you can say, we are playing with the fluid accumulation, you can say. So it should not affect the normal functioning of the body. So the side effect of osmotic diuretic, like extracellular volume expansion, as we have seen just now in the last slide, that it is increasing the extracellular volume, you can say this can be serious problem in people with heart failure or pulmonary edema. So if a patient is having heart failure, that is congestive heart failure or pulmonary edema, you have to be very precautious for using this osmotic diuretic, you can say. So this is what the important point. Nextly, some minimal like headache is there, nausea and vomiting due to the slight increase in the extracellular fluid, dehydration and loss of free water. As the fluid is removing from the body, the dehydration and loss of water is occurring. Hypernatremia or increased sodium level, as we have just now talked of that the sodium is along with the fluid, it is removing, but it is not concerned that the sodium should remove, you can say. So if it is getting accumulated in the body, you can say, so it may produce the hypernatremia. This is one of the side effect you can include for the osmotic diuretic, you can say. Next point is regarding the drug interaction of osmotic diuretic. Urea may cause thrombosis or pain if extravasation occurs and should not be administered to patient with impaired liver function. It should not be given, urea should not be given because of the risk of elevation of the blood ammonia level. Okay, so we have to be very precautious. If your liver is not functioning properly, the urea use has to be precautiously given. Both mannitol and urea are contraindicated in patient with active intracranial bleeding. Here it should not be given if the patient is having some accident, you can say, and it is rushed to the hospital and it required the mannitol and urea. So it is very precautious to be not to be given this two things in this intracranial bleeding, you can say. Glycerin is metabolized and can cause the hyperglycemia. So the metabolism of this drug, that is glycerin, it may lead to the hyperglycemic effect in the patient, you can say. So some drug interactions for the osmotic diuretic you can remember, and you can have for your understanding, you can say. Next class we go for the carbonic anhydrase inhibitors. Now carbonic anhydrase inhibitors. Carbonic anhydrase is an enzyme and we are inhibiting that enzyme. So first we will discuss that what is the role of this carbonic anhydrase and why we are inhibiting, okay, and how this diuresis produce in the body. So these 2 to 3 questions if you remember or if you just understand, okay, it's become very easy. I have taken 2 slides or 2 figures also. It will be help you to very easily understand the topic. Like for example, carbonic anhydrase in an enzyme that assist rapid interconversion of carbon dioxide and water into carbonic acid, protons and bicarbonate ions. So first para is in the slide, you can say. So that is what explaining the role of carbonic anhydrase. Only carbonic anhydrase, what it do in the body. So if you see the lower figure, carbon dioxide plus water, in the red you can see carbonic anhydrase enzyme which produces carbonic acid. This carbonic acid it plays a role in maintaining or regulation of the pH and fluid balance in different parts of our body, you can say. Further, it is divided into bicarbonate ion and hydrogen ion, you can say. And if you see the upper figure, hydrogen is exchanged for sodium, you can say, and sodium is getting retained. As sodium is getting retained in the body, the fluid is also getting retaining in the body, you can say. So if the carbonic anhydrase is working or if is working in a higher amount in the body, you can say, so this is continuous exchange of hydrogen with the sodium, you can say, and retaining the fluid, you can say. So this condition become worse, you can say. That is why we have to give the carbonic anhydrase inhibitors. We have to inhibit this enzyme so that the drugs will act properly and produces diuretic effect. By blocking this carbonic anhydrase, the flow, or you can say the excretion of the bicarbonate ions or sodium ions and carbonic acid is free from the body, you can say, and it produces the diuretic effect. So this is a slide where you can understand that what are carbonic anhydrase inhibitors. First, the role of carbonic anhydrase, then how this diuresis produces by inhibiting this carbonic anhydrase. Further, we will see in the mechanism of action, the mechanism of action of carbonic anhydrase inhibitors. The carbonic anhydrase inhibitors induces diuresis by inhibiting the formation of carbonic acid within proximal convoluted tubule and distal tubular cells. So the main site of action is a proximal convoluted tubule. We have seen the site of action of different diuretics. So you can remember here, again it is repeating in the mechanism of action. So this results in a lesser exchange of hydrogen ion for sodium ion in the kidney tubules. Sodium ion along with bicarbonate and associated water molecules were then excreted, and a diuretic effect was noted down. Just now we have seen in the figure also that how the excretion takes place and how the fluid gets coming out of the body, you can say, by inhibiting the carbonic anhydrase inhibition, you can say. So the general uses of this class is primary use for the treatment of glaucoma, reduce intraocular pressure, that is in the glaucoma condition. As a separate diuretic also it may be used for other condition. Anti-epileptic sometimes it may be used. For mountain sickness, it is what used where the fluid gets accumulated on the body, you can say. Idiopathic intracranial hypertension. Okay, so here the it is very useful in 2 to 3 conditions where very good effect you can get of the carbonic anhydrase inhibitors. Now we go for the structures of the drug, because as you know that when you are discussing the topic, okay, in the examination, okay, you have to draw the structures, especially in the medicinal chemistry, you can say. So this is how, very simple to remember. Actually it's a sulfonamide class of the derivatives, you can say, like acetazolamide, sulfonamide group is there, you can say. Methazolamide, a slight difference, only CH3 group applies on the nitrogen, you can say. It is so easy to understand. Again ethoxylamide, dichlorphenamide, dorzolamide and brinzolamide. Okay, so these 2-3 structures, 5 to 6 structures you can remember, and you can have for your answer also while writing and remembering that drugs for the this one. Next we go for the side effects of carbonic anhydrase inhibitors. As every class is what having the side effects and drug interactions. So this class also, side effect of carbonic anhydrase inhibitor, hyperchloremic metabolic acidosis caused by the loss of plasma bicarbonates. Okay, so here the metabolic acidosis occur because there is a loss of plasma bicarbonates. As you know, it is acting as a buffering system of the body. So as it gets lost from the body, the acidosis may occur in the patient, you can say. Kidney stones due to increased phosphate and calcium excretion. As this phosphate and calcium is continuously coming on to the kidneys, you can say, you have the calcium oxalate crystals, or we will see the different calcium stones also in the kidney patients. So this is when long term use of this class is there, it may cause the kidney stone also. Low potassium level, which we call it as a hypokalemia, due to the loss of potassium from the body. Drowsiness due to potassium level, drowsiness also occurs. Neurotoxicity, allergic or hypersensitivity reaction. Some people, if they have hypersensitivity reaction, so it should be discarded. These are normal side effects of this class. Next we go for drug interaction of carbonic anhydrase inhibitors. Not much drug interactions are there. The first one, if we take acetazolamide plus sodium bicarbonate, increase the risk of renal calculi formation. Just now we have seen upper side also that kidney stones due to the increased phosphate and calcium excretion. Okay, continuously it is coming on to the kidney, the load of calcium, so it is getting deposited, some amount it is getting deposited, you can say, which increases the risk of renal calculi formation. Next is acetazolamide plus timolol. Okay, the beta blocker, you can say. The use of acetazolamide tablet with timolol eye drop resulted in a severe mixed acidosis in a patient with chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. Okay, so there is a chance of development of the mixed acidosis. Okay, the acid of the body gets increases, due to which the patient is having various problems, you can say. Some are having rashes or inflammation or various type of the effects occur in the patient, you can say. So these are some drug interactions you can remember for the carbonic anhydrase inhibitors. Next we go for the benzothiazide or thiazide diuretics. Okay, these two names, you may call it as a benzothiazide derivatives or thiazide diuretics. Okay, so depending upon the nucleus, the name is given to this class, that is a chemical nucleus, you can say. So they are actually the sulfonamide derivatives. From sulfonamide they have been converted, or research has been carried out, and they have in the structure the sulfonamide group also, you can say. So both the structures, you can see the sulfonamide nucleus also you can see, and benzothiazide nucleus also you can see. So here the name is given because the benzene ring is there, sulfur group is there, and diazine, di means 2 and azine means in the chemistry we called nitrogen as a azine, so diazine nucleus. So numbering is also given for preparation of the IUPAC naming system. You can remember the naming also. This numbering is so important in the medicinal chemistry, to remember the structure, at what point or at what number, you can say at which carbon, you can say where there is a attachment, you can remember easily, like 7th position, 6th position, 3rd position, where the attachments are there. So if you remember, one way to remember the structures, this point you can have, you focus on the nucleus of the structure, you can say, or class, you can say. So you will be able to remember all the structure within no time. Okay, so this is one hint where you can remember the lot of structures also depending upon the nucleus. So this drug, these diuretics are actively secreted in the proximal tubule and are carried to the loop of Henle and to the distal tubule. So here the major site of action of this compound is in the distal convoluted tubule. So this is what, if MCQ question is asked, where the benzothiazines act or thiazide diuretic act. So you can remember here distal convoluted tubules. Okay, these drugs compete for the chloride binding site of sodium chloride symporter. So this is a very important one, the sodium chloride symporter. So symporter means what? Symporter is an integral membrane protein that is involved in the transport of many different types of molecule across the cell membrane. Okay, the symporter works in the plasma membrane, and molecules are transported across the cell membrane, you can say, at the same time. Okay, so and it is therefore also called as the co-transporter. Okay, so this is what helping the exchange of the ions, you can say, especially. So here what this drug they do, this drug compete for the chloride binding site of the sodium chloride symporter and inhibit the reabsorption of sodium and chloride. Sodium and chloride means sodium chloride means our common salt. Okay, for this reason they are referred to as saluretics. That is why the name of this class is given saluretics. Okay, now the new name comes across to this class. Okay, saluretics. Sal stands for salt, sodium chloride, and uretics, that is a diuretic, you can say. So three names you can have the synonym for this class. First one, benzothiazide diuretic, thiazide diuretic, and saluretics. So don't confuse if any question is asked, like saluretics acts on dash. Okay, 4 options may be given. So distal convoluted tubule or proximal tubule or ascending loop, or like this way options might be given. So saluretics, the student should remember that what do you mean by this saluretics. So remember the word sal stand for salt and uretic, that is a diuretic. So these three synonyms are there. So any question asked on any word also, you can remember the things you can say. So these are benzothiazide diuretics. The structures, if you see, again simple structures, as we have seen the nucleus. So different attachment at 7th position, 8th position, what different attachments are there. Okay, so hydrochlorothiazide, chlorothiazide. Okay, the only difference is of the hydrogen group in the structure, you can say. So you remember this very easily. Then hydroflumethiazide and bendroflumethiazide, the whole structure remains same, only the difference is at the 3rd position, that is a benzyl group which is applied. Okay, so this is how you can remember very easily the structure. If you practice out this structure 4 to 5 times, you remember it very easily. So if any question is also asked on IUPAC naming system and all that, if you remember the structure formally with nucleus, you can crack that IUPAC name system also in the medicinal chemistry. Trichlomethazide is also there, benzthiazide is also there. So simple structures you can remember for this one. Next we go for the uses of thiazide diuretic. Now where these thiazide diuretics are used, like first one, for the hypertension, as I have just now told you that hydrochlorothiazide is a famous drug which is used for with various combination, beta blockers, ACE inhibitors, angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitors, or angiotensin 2 receptor inhibitors, etc. So this treatment of hypertension, these diuretics are very effective. I have specially taken this figure so that you can remember, very easy figure. If you remember this figure, you can easily write the mechanism of action and use of this drug in hypertension. So what they do, they reduces water sodium retention in the body, which what happens, the fluid is going out of the body, the blood volume which is increased in the edema condition or in hypertension, you can say, that is what lower down or decrease in the blood volume occurs. This decrease in blood volume, what happens, the cardiac output get decreases, because when the fluid is accumulating, the load on the heart get increases, due to which problem occurs or hypertension occurs. So here cardiac output also decreases. Again, this thiazide diuretic, as it removes the fluid, extra fluid from the body, the peripheral resistance also decreases, you can say, because the blood volume decreases, and the end result, what happens is the decrease in blood pressure. So it's a very effective one. In alone therapy also, diuretic alone in the hypertension, if just a fluid accumulation is there, it's very effective in treating the hypertension. Or otherwise it is combined with the other calcium channel blockers also. It may combine with the other classes and overcome the hypertension treatment, you can say. Next is the treatment of mild to moderate heart failure. Okay, these are very effective. Mild edema, hypercalciuria, calcium nephrolithiasis. Okay, calcium nephrolithiasis, you can say the process of forming a kidney stone, a stone in the kidney, you can say, or lower down in the urinary tract, or urinary tract it is having the stone, you can say. These kidney stones are commonly cause of blood in the urine and pain in the abdomen, flank or groin region, you can say. They are mainly of the calcium oxalate. Okay, so if this is the condition, this thiazide diuretic, they are removing very well this calcium stones also from the body. So in the condition of calcium nephrolithiasis, this diuretics, thiazide diuretics are effective. Next, diabetes insipidus. Already we have discussed this condition in the previous slide. So you remember now what do you mean by this diabetes insipidus. Okay, now we go for the thiazide like diuretics. So as we discuss in the classification, that thiazide diuretics are different and thiazide like diuretics are different. So what is the difference? Again we can discuss here. These are the structurally diverse group of sulfonamide derivative that do not contain benzothiazine ring. Okay, as we have discussed that they are structurally, chemical structure of this drug is different from the benzothiazine drugs, you can say. If you see all the drugs in the thiazide diuretic, they are containing the benzothiazine ring, but here they are not containing the benzothiazine. They are structurally different. Nevertheless, they have the same mechanism of action and similar therapeutic activity and adverse effect as the thiazide diuretic. Now, thiazide, that is why the name is given to this class as thiazide-like diuretic, because they are having the same mechanism of action and similar therapeutic activities and adverse effect of the thiazide diuretic. That is why the name is given or classified as thiazide-like diuretic. So if anybody asks you that thiazide diuretics are there and thiazide-like diuretics are there, so what is the difference between these two classes? Why they are called as thiazide-like diuretics? So you can explain this within the 2 points. You can say, if you see the first means the drug which are there, which nucleus is there, we can see. So first one, quinazolinone derivatives. Okay, if you see, we have taken first the nucleus to remember the structure. If you remember the nucleus, it becomes very easy to have the structure of the drug. The name of the drugs are metazolone and cunethazone. Okay, so these two drugs you can remember easily for the thiazide-like diuretic. Next class is thalidomide derivative. See, in the medicinal chemistry, various questions which are targeted at the nationalized competitive exams also, it is related to their nucleus also, like thalidomide derivative. Okay, so dash is the thalidomide derivative. Various examples might be given like metazolone or indapamide or chlorthalidone. Okay, 4 options might be given. So you have to remember that thalidomide derivative is the only one drug in the thiazide-like diuretic, that is chlorthalidone. So it's a very easy structure. Thalidomide nucleus is there. Okay, so you can remember the thalidomide nucleus, and where the attachment is there, you can just put into the structure. Next is indolene derivative. Again, indole nucleus. Indolene nucleus is there. Okay, so here indapamide, as the name indicate, indapamide, indolene derivative. This is also you can remember the matching of the nucleus name, indolene and indapamide. Okay, I starting from I. So explore your own ways of remembrance of the structure. You can say that will help you for further competitive exams also, and for the for working for preparation of the exam also. So if you see thalidomide derivative, okay, thalidomide nucleus is there, chlorthalidone is the drug, and indolene derivative, indapamide drug is there. So this is how it is, the nucleus which is there. According to the nucleus, we are having the classification of this drugs, you can say. Now we go for the thiazide diuretics, that is side effect of this class, you can say. So much side effects are there because sodium chloride, they are interfering of the body, salt of the body, they are interfering. So many things happens in the body, like hypokalemia, metabolic alkalosis. Okay, as the bicarbonate and phosphate are accumulating in the body, so that produces alkalosis process, because sodium chloride is removing from the body. So that is how you can hypokalemic metabolic alkalosis you can correlate. Next is the hyperuricemia, or raised blood uric acid, predisposing to the gout. Now uric acid is also retaining in the body or blood, you can say, because only sodium chloride and water is removing, other things are remaining, so that creates the problem. So it is leading to the gout condition. Impaired carbohydrate or glucose tolerance, leading to the high blood sugar in the body. Hyperlipidemia, or increased blood lipids, cholesterol and lipoproteinemia gets increases in the blood, you can say. Hyponatremia, or low blood sodium, as we have just now we have stated that sodium and chloride are removing from the body by this channel, you can say. So this is how the sodium hyponatremia occur, that is the low sodium level. Allergic or hypersensitivity reactions occurs caused by the sulfonamide component. See, as we have seen the structure, the sulfonamide group which is there, or they are the derivative of sulfonamide, you can say, that produces the complication and producing the allergic or hypersensitivity reaction. So this is how you can remember the side effect also. In the structure, what is there? Sulfonamide. You can correlate with the side effect of the thiazide diuretic. Hemolytic anemia, breakdown of the red blood cells, thrombocytopenia, low platelet count, and acute necrotic pancreatitis. Okay, so these are the allergic reactions or hypersensitivity reactions which are initiated by the thiazide diuretics. So it's if any patient is hypersensitive, because many patients they are sensitive to many things in the market, you can say, so it has to be used very precautiously. That is why many doctors ask you that if you take this drug, anything happens to you, or allergy, if you are allergic to anything, just tell us, like this way the counseling is there. So next is the weakness and tiredness. Okay, as the salt is removed from the body. Okay, so sodium and chloride, they are very essential for the depolarization and repolarization, which you correlate with the weakness and the tiredness in the body, you can say, after this diuretic. Paresthesias or numbness of the limbs. Okay, numbness of the limbs are there, limbs becomes swell, you can say, or problem is there in the limbs, you can say. And lastly, the impotence. Okay, if you take it for a long period of time, okay, the person is unable to conceive the baby, you can say, because it affects the kidney system, it affects your sperms, etc. Many correlations are there with this type of the diuretics, you can say. So these are the side effects of the diuretic, and here the drug interaction. Now we go for the drug interaction of thiazide diuretic. As we have seen, this is a very important class in which is helpful in hypertension and covering various other conditions also, but they are having much side effects also and drug interactions also. Like for example, thiazide diuretic may diminish the effect of anticoagulant, uricosuric agents used to treat gout, sulfonylureas and insulin. Okay, so they decrease or diminish this effect, you can say. And other drug, they increases the effect like of anesthetic drugs, diazoxide, cardiac glycoside, lithium carbonate we give, loop diuretic, and vitamin D. So this is having the synergistic effect, you can say, or increasing the effect of this type of the drug, you can say. So the dose of the drugs has to be monitored very precautiously. It's not so easy that giving the diuretics and removing the fluid from the body, and you will have the things in the body, you can say. This lot of things we have to remember when we are prescribing the drug to the patient, you can say. The effectiveness of thiazide diuretics may be reduced by NSAIDs and bile acid sequestrant. How they decreases the effectiveness? By reducing the absorption of thiazide diuretic. Okay, actually with justification we have taken here the drug interaction. So you can remember also justification also, you can remember that if it combined with this drug, you can say what will happen and why. Okay, like this way. So amphotericin B and corticosteroid increases the risk of hypokalemia induced by the thiazide diuretic. Okay, so those who are preparing for competitive exams, you can remember it very well, why amphotericin B and corticosteroid increases the risk of hypokalemia induced by the thiazide diuretic, you can say. A potential lethal drug interaction is that with antiarrhythmic drug. Here what the lethal word is taken, potentially lethal drug interaction is that with the antiarrhythmic drug that prolong the QT interval, that is the ventricular repolarization, such as quinidine. Okay, so it should not be combined with the quinidine, otherwise it will worsen the effect, that is it may lead to the arrhythmic condition, and the patient may get the danger effect of this drug along with the quinidine, you can say. So the prolongation of QT interval can lead to the development of polymorphic ventricular tachycardia. That is what happening in the arrhythmic condition, you can say. Among the patient taking digoxin, low level of potassium caused by concurrent digoxin and thiazide diuretic may cause weakness, cramp, and irregular heartbeat. Now digoxin, as you know, it's a narrow therapeutic index drug, you can say. So when this drug is combined with thiazide diuretic, the patient may have weakness in the body, cramp and irregular heartbeat. As the sodium and chloride levels get affected, it is removed from the body. So all these things get started in the body, you can say. Next, last one, the lithium given concurrently with thiazide diuretic may induce lithium toxicity. As just now we have stated that where the lithium is used, like for example the drug we give like lithium carbonate, which is commonly used in the treatment of bipolar disorder, okay, helping to stabilize the wild mood swing, you can say, or caused by illness, you can say. So the mood get affecting, so in that condition we give lithium carbonate to the patient, okay. But at the same time, if he is receiving the thiazide diuretic also, so this decreases the renal elimination of the lithium. Lithium level should be monitored to ensure the safety of the patient, you can say. So the patient has to be monitored for the lithium levels in the body, you can say. Now we go for the next class, that is high ceiling diuretics, or it is also called as loop diuretics. So two synonyms you can use, high ceiling diuretics also it is called, or loop diuretic also it is called. So why they are called this loop or high ceiling, that we will see for the discussion. This class of drug is characterized by more by its pharmacological similarities than by its chemical similarity. Again, in this class, all the drugs are having different nucleus, okay. They are not having same nucleus, you can say. So that is what the first point. They are having pharmacological similarities but different chemical moieties, you can say. For example, include bumetanide, furosemide, torsemide and ethacrynic acid. For this class, four famous drugs you can remember. This drug produces a peak diuresis much greater than the observed with other commonly used diuretic, hence the name given as high ceiling diuretics. Okay, just now we have discussed in the last classification slide also that why they are called as high ceiling, because they produces much greater diuretic effect than any other class of the diuretic, you can say. So they have given the name as high ceiling, okay. Or loop diuretic because they are acting on the loop of Henle, you can say. So that is why the name is given to that loop diuretic, you can say. So it's very easy to remember for this class, you can say why the name is given as high ceiling or loop diuretic, you can say. Now the uses where this class of drug, the high diuresis, in which condition we require, like acute pulmonary edema, renal edema, hypertension associated with renal failure, congestive heart failure, hypercalcemia, hyperkalemia, forced diuresis in case of poisoning. All are critical conditions. In critical conditions also, like acute pulmonary edema, where the fluid accumulates in the lungs, you can say the patient is unable to breathe properly because fluid is accumulated, okay. Ventilators has to be applied for the patient to forcefully put the oxygen inside the body, you can say. In that condition, these loop diuretics are very useful, okay. Renal edema, hypertension associated with renal failure, okay. If your kidneys are not working, you can say, so in that condition this high ceiling diuretics are useful. You can say in congestive heart failure also, the critical condition, forced diuresis in case of poisoning, okay. If poison occurs, okay, poisoning occurs and it is water soluble or in the fluid it is there, you can say you can remove immediately the fluid by giving the loop diuretic or high ceiling diuretic. So in some cases it may become the life saving drug also in ICU condition where the last stages of the patient is there, okay. And the the healthcare professionals, they are trying to save the life of the patient, you can say. So they can try out the high ceiling or loop diuretic to save the life of a person also, you can say. Now we go for the mechanism of action of loop diuretic, how this strong diuretic effect they get in the loop of Henle. The main site of action is believed to be on the thick ascending limb of loop of Henle, where they inhibit the luminal sodium, potassium and chloride symporter. So here they act on sodium, potassium and chloride. Here you have to remember the three things: sodium, potassium and chloride. symporter. Okay, that means the exchange of the ions which is taking place, it is getting inhibited, you can say. That means it is excreted out from the body, you can say, hence inhibiting sodium chloride and potassium reabsorption. These diuretics are commonly referred to as the loop diuretics, you can say. So they inhibit the sodium chloride and potassium reabsorption from the urine into the blood, you can say. So that is what excreting out the higher form of the volume of fluid from the body, you can say. High ceiling diuretic are characterized by a quick onset and short duration of action. Their diuretic effect appear in approximately 30 minutes and last for approximately 6 hours, you can say. So they are having quick onset and very short duration of activity, you can say. Between 30 minutes to 6 hours they can finish off their work in the body. Now in the figure you can come across again to the sodium chloride, potassium and chloride symporter. You can see in the figure that from the urine, this channel or symporter, you can say, that is chloride, potassium and sodium is going again inside the cell. Okay, so that is what this channel is working in the body, you can say. But we are inhibiting this channel or sodium chloride and potassium symporter. So this drug act on this condition and they inhibit this route, you can say, or channel, you can say, and there is maximum outflow of the sodium, potassium and chloride from the blood, which take away with it the water level also, or water also, that is for the osmotic, it drain out the water from the blood, you can say. So this is how it is working. This is a mechanism of action for the loop diuretic. You can draw this figure also for your explanation in the examination, and you can discuss the mechanism of action with the help of the figure also, you can say. Now coming on to the structures of the high ceiling diuretic. As we have seen that structurally every drug is different. Okay, pharmacologically they are having the same effect, you can say, but structurally they are different. So every time you have to practice out separately. Furosemide drug structure, ethacrynic acid is having the drug structure, bumetanide is having the drug structure, torsemide is having the drug structure. So you can predict the MCQ question also, like you can have a halogen containing drug in the high ceiling diuretics. Okay, so only one drug is there halogen containing, that is ethacrynic acid, the chloride ions is there. So this is how the MCQ questions can be targeted. If you structure out practice out the structure, you will get the MCQ question very easily, you can say. So these are the 4 drugs. Very if you practice out, you can get the structures also. Now we go for the side effect of loop diuretic, as it's a strong diuretic. So what are the possible side effects which can occur in the body, you can say. So here the hypokalemic metabolic alkalosis due to loss of potassium and increased alkalinity of the blood, you can say. So here as this class remove sodium, potassium and chloride, so as the potassium loss is there, so increased alkalinity of the blood occurs in the body, you can say. Ototoxicity, that is ear damage, you can say, or hearing getting affected, you can say. Ototoxicity or damage to hearing, this damage may be reversible if the drug is stopped. So it's a time being the drug is affecting your hearings also. So this will be recovered if you stop the drug, you can say. So this is a time being side effect of the loop diuretic. High blood level of uric acid, predisposition to attack of gout. As the uric acid is not removed from the body, you can say, it is retaining in the body, it may lead to the gout condition. Okay, so this may lead to the joint pain, and gout condition may occur in the patient. Hypomagnesemia or low magnesium level, you can say. So magnesium levels also decreases because it follows the potassium along with the release, you can say, in the urine. So magnesium levels are also affected. Allergic or hypersensitivity reaction. Again, if any person is having hypersensitivity, because we are affecting the electrolyte of the body, you can say. So many people, if it gets imbalance, you can say they have the allergic reaction in the body, you can say. Dehydration, of course, these are strong loop diuretic, so there may be chances of removing the normal fluid also of the body, which leads to the dehydration. So it's a common one, dehydration problem. So we have to manage the fluid of the body, you can say. High blood level of the calcium or hypercalcemia. So calcium is also accumulating and leading to the hypercalcemic condition in the body, you can say. Now we go for the drug interactions of loop diuretic. So many drug interactions are there. If this drug, loop diuretics, are co-administered with the following classes, what will happen and why it happens, we have given in the bracket, you can say, the justification. Aminoglycoside, synergistic effect, synergism of the ototoxicity caused by the both the drugs. So aminoglycoside also cause the ototoxicity, and loop diuretic also cause the ototoxicity, you can say. So synergism in the ototoxicity may occur if aminoglycoside occurs added, you can say. Anticoagulant, increase anticoagulant activity. The dose has to be managed, you can say, for anticoagulant if given along with loop diuretic. Cardiac glycoside, and antiarrhythmic drug that prolong the repolarization, increase arrhythmia. So it has to be given with precaution. Lithium, in the last also we have seen, like lithium carbonate if given to the patient of the bipolar disorder. So in that, the level of the lithium has to be managed, you can say, or diagnose daily, you can say. Propranolol increases plasma level of propranolol. Sulfonylurea, hyperglycemia condition occurs. Cisplatin, increased risk of diuretic induced ototoxicity. NSAID, blunted diuretic response, and salicylate toxicity when given with high doses of salicylate. Okay, so NSAIDs also, it's a common anti-inflammatory drugs, you can say. So it has to be given very precautioniously, because it may have the blunted response, you can say. That means there is no sharpness in the diuretic effect, you can say. So probenecid, blunted diuretic response, again for the probenecid also. Thiazide diuretic, if you combine the loop diuretic with thiazide diuretic in many of the conditions, like synergism of diuretic activity of both the drug leading to the profound diuresis. What happen when one diuretic is going on, okay, it is not producing much effect, you can say. So you combine with the other diuretic, so this may, if the condition occurs, so the synergism of the diuretic activity of both the drug leading to profound diuresis. Okay, next is amphotericin B, increases potential for nephrotoxicity and toxicity and intensification of the electrolyte imbalance, you can say. So again, for the amphotericin B also, see, many of the classes are repeating for many classes of the diuretic, you can say. So you can remember in thiazide diuretic what happens with the amphotericin B, here in the loop diuretic what happens with the this one. So you can remember some important points, so that you can remember the drug interactions also, because many questions are asked on the drug interactions also. So it becomes easy if you go through the things continuously. It will be in your mind that if it combines with this, it will combine with this, what happens, etc. Now we go for the potassium sparing diuretic, the last class of the diuretic chapter, you can say, or topic, you can say. So here, potassium sparing diuretic. Okay, so what happens in this and why they are called as the potassium sparing, you can say, that will say. Potassium sparing diuretic do not promote the secretion of potassium during diuresis. They do not cause hypokalemia, low potassium level. This means that potassium is retained in the body. That is why the name is given to this class as potassium sparing diuretic. Okay, so this is what first line explains. And however, there is a high risk of hyperkalemia. Okay, as potassium is retaining in the body, what happens? Continuous deposition of the potassium, it is producing the hyperkalemia. The other worse condition, you can say. High potassium level, if they are used with other agent that also retain potassium, such as ACE inhibitors, okay, angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitors, if it is given along with the potassium sparing, the high level of the potassium occurs in the body, you can say. So we have to be very precautious not to combine the potassium sparing diuretic with ACE inhibitors, you can say. Next, it is extremely important that the patient who are treated with any potassium sparing diuretic be closely monitored for the potassium level. Okay, of course, as the potassium is increasing, it's not a good sign for the body, you can say. If it increases to a higher level, it creates a problem in the body. We will see what are the different side effects in the body. Exogenous potassium supplement is usually discontinued when potassium sparing diuretic is instituted. Okay, of course, okay, as they are potassium sparing, that means retaining the potassium in the body, you can say. And if you are having some potassium supplement in the body, you can say, for weakness and all that, the potassium supplements are also given. So here they have to be discontinued if you are initiating this therapy, you can say. Potassium sparing diuretic may be used alone or in conjunction with high loop diuretic or thiazide diuretic. Here it may be, depending on the conditions, it may be used alone also or in combination with the loop or thiazide diuretic to maintain the potassium level of the body also, you can say. Now we go for the mechanism of action of potassium sparing diuretic. Okay. Here mechanism of action you can remember by one line also: epithelial sodium channel inhibitors. ENAC we write in the short form. If you remember this short form also, it click very easily that what the mechanism of action is there. So it's a epithelial sodium channel inhibitors. Okay, sodium channel inhibitors, epithelial sodium channel inhibitors. So potassium sparing diuretic exert the diuretic effect by blocking an epithelial sodium channel in a principal cells of the late distal convoluted tubule and the collecting tubule. If you see in the structure or figure, you can say that it is having on the distal convoluted tubule also and continuing below till the collecting duct also. So in the figure you can draw this figure also if you want, and you can discuss the mechanism of action. Okay, so here sodium channel inhibitor block the reabsorption of sodium and inhibit the secretion of potassium ion. The net result is increased sodium and chloride ion excretion in the urine and almost no potassium excretion. Okay, so here the main aim of this class, that is why the name is also given to this class, is a potassium sparing. It is not leaving the potassium from the body to go into the urine, you can say. It is retaining the potassium. What goes into the urine and in the fluid is sodium and chloride. Okay, so you can remember this mechanism of action in a small manner also, and you can have the remembrance of the mechanism of action. Now we go for the chemical structure. Pyridine derivative, okay, and aminopyrazine derivative. These are the two drugs which we categorize as a potassium sparing diuretic, you can say. They are very useful drugs, you can say. So pyridine nucleus, if you see with numbering, we have the nucleus, and the drug triamterene. Okay, it's very easy to remember if you remember the nucleus, you can say. So where in what position the attachment is there, you can write easily. So here pyridine derivative, triamterene, and aminopyrazine derivative. Okay, here aminopyrazine nucleus itself is given in the structure, so we have not taken separately. So you can remember amyloid. It's a very common drug which is used. Okay, so you can match the name with the nucleus, aminopyrazine and amyloid. Okay, so this is how it's very easy to remember the drug structure. Now uses: hypertension, edema, swelling due to heart failure, liver impairment or nephritic syndrome, hypokalemia due to the effect of diuretic that waste potassium. Okay, So these are the common uses where this potassium sparing diuretics are used. Okay, hypertension also used, edema also used, liver impairment or nephritic syndrome also it is used, and most probably or important one is the hypokalemia due to the effect of diuretics that waste the potassium. We have seen in the previous classes, many diuretic classes, they waste the potassium. Okay, so due to which weakness occurs, cramp occurs, or many things are going on in the patient, you can say. So when that diuretic is given to nullify or to overcome the potassium level, we give this potassium sparing diuretic class to that patient, you can say. So next we go for the mineralocorticoid receptor antagonist, aldosterone antagonist, or potassium sparing diuretic. This is also the class which is coming under the potassium sparing diuretic. Separate we have taken just to remember that this how it produces the mechanism of action, because the synonym which is there, mineralocorticoid receptor antagonist or aldosterone antagonist or the potassium sparing diuretic also you can call them. Okay, so this is how, this is the last class we can discuss for the diuretics, you can say. So here the adrenal cortex secrete a potent mineralocorticoid called aldosterone. Okay, the body, the adrenal cortex of your body secrete the potent mineralocorticoid called aldosterone, which promotes salt and water retention and potassium and hydrogen ion excretion. Okay, so what this aldosterone it do, it's a hormone of your body, you can say. So what it do, it promotes the salt and water retention. Okay, that means the fluid is retaining in the body due to the aldosterone, and potassium and hydrogen is excreting in the urine, due to which the acidic urine come across. As hydrogen goes into the urine, it takes sodium inside, it exchange for the sodium, you can say, where the fluid is getting retained in the body. We have seen in the last slides also and figures also. So this is the role of aldosterone. Okay, now aldosterone exerts its biological effect through binding to the mineralocorticoid receptor. Now this aldosterone, how it acts in the body? By binding to the mineralocorticoid receptor. A receptor is there. This aldosterone biomolecule or hormone attached to this receptor and initiate the effect in the body or cell of the body, you can say. A nuclear transcription factor, that is DNA. It produces proteins, it affect the electrolyte balance of the body, you can say. It retain the salt and water, you can say, and excrete the potassium and hydrogen from the body, like this way. So this is a normal role of the aldosterone, which is, just you remember, it retains or it promotes the retention of salt and water inside the body and excretion of potassium and hydrogen ion. And just now we talk of that hydrogen ion exchange for the sodium. Sodium is taken back into the blood, and due to which the fluid is also taken back into the blood, you can say, and fluid gets accumulated. A substance that antagonizes the effect of aldosterone could conceivably be a good diuretic. So any substance which inhibit, you can say, or for a good diuretic, you can say, if we antagonize the effect of aldosterone, what we will get the end? We will get the diuresis. Okay, so the spironolactone and eplerenone are example of such antagonist. Okay, so the two good examples, spironolactone and eplerenone, are the examples of this antagonist, you can say. What we are antagonizing? We are antagonizing the aldosterone by inhibiting the receptor called mineralocorticoid receptor. These drugs are also classified as potassium sparing diuretic. Okay, so here, as it is, the channel is inhibited or receptor is inhibited, there is no excretion of potassium in the urine, you can say. Potassium is retained inside the body. That is why this class of drug, or you can say they are also called as potassium sparing diuretics. Okay, now we go for the mechanism of action to what we have discussed. For this, I have taken a very good figure here. If you look on to the figure, as we have the text also for our discussion, you can say, but figure speaks much more. As we discuss, you can look on to the figure what happens. Okay, so mechanism of aldosterone antagonist. Aldosterone binds to the mineralocorticoid receptor. If you see here in the lower side, aldosterone plus MR, it is written. MR stands for mineralocorticoid receptor in the renal tubule cells and forms a complex. Okay, so as it binds, okay, it forms the complex. You can see on the right side, aldosterone is there and mineralocorticoid receptor is there. And here, if you see, it is having the complex formation. Okay, this complex enhances transcription of specific DNA segments in the nucleus, leading to the formation of two protein transporters, that is sodium potassium ATPase pump and sodium channel, called as epithelial sodium channel. Just now we have seen, located at the renal tubule cells. This protein transporter increases sodium reabsorption and potassium excretion in the distal tubule and collecting duct of the kidneys. So here first para, we are discussing about the role of aldosterone, which is continuously increasing in the patient of the body of the patient, you can say. So aldosterone binds to mineralocorticoid receptor, and it initiate the two sympathers, you can say, or pumps also, you can say, sodium potassium ATPase pump and sodium channel, that is epithelial sodium channel. Okay, so by initiating this, what happens? Potassium is going outside and sodium is getting retained in the body, you can say. Now our mechanism of the diuretic. Mineralocorticoid receptor antagonist competitively inhibit. This is important one. Competitively inhibitors of the aldosterone binding to the mineralocorticoid receptors. Okay, so the receptor binding is our drug compete for that receptor with the aldosterone, and very effectively due to its structure. If you see, we are having the steroidal type of the structures of this class, you can say. So it is having the competition for the aldosterone, our biomolecule or hormone, you can say, and due to the strong chemical structure, it firmly or strongly bind to the receptors. This lead to the higher level of potassium in serum and increased sodium excretion, resulting in decreased body fluid and lower body blood pressure, you can say. Okay, so this is the mechanism. Okay, by inhibiting, okay, the mineralocorticoid receptor, further inhibition of the sodium ATPase pump, you can say, and sodium channel occurs, where there is the potassium gets retained into the body and sodium gets outside the body, you can say. So this is how you get the diuresis, and that is why the name is also given to this class as the potassium sparing diuretic, you can say. Now we can see the structures of the drug. Very simple, steroidal nucleus, as we have stated. Two drugs like spironolactone. If you see that spironolactone is converted to candrenone, which is a metabolite of spironolactone. Many competitive exams ask the question on the candrenone, the metabolic product of dash, like this way. So you can remember this, and candrenone itself remain in the candrenoic acid anion form in the blood, you can say. So this is how the first you can draw the scheme here. Okay, that is the synthetic steroidal aldosterone antagonist diuretic, you can say, and eplerenone. You can have the separate structures. So only two drugs are there, and candrenone, one more drug you can include for your discussion of the aldosterone antagonist. Now uses of this class, like diuretics, secondary hyperaldosteronism, hypertension, treat fluid retention in patient with congestive heart failure, cirrhosis or kidney problem. Okay, so here if the aldosterone hormone is diagnosed to be higher in the patient, this class is very effective in producing the effect in the patient, you can say. So these are the uses of this class. Now we go for the side effect of the potassium sparing diuretic. Both amiloride, triamterene, spironolactone, eplerenone, okay, all in common we take as a side effect of potassium sparing diuretic. First one, hyperkalemia or rise in blood potassium level. Yes, of course, as the potassium is accumulating in the body, you can say that is what the potassium sparing diuretics are. So hyperkalemia is the condition where occurs in the patient, which may be sometimes may produce many complications, you can say. Hyperchloremic metabolic acidosis, okay, gynecomastia, or the breast enlargement in the males. Okay, so enlarged breast in males occurs. Swollen male breast tissues caused by the hormonal imbalance. As we are playing with the hormones of the body, this may occur. The other causes may be the male hormone like testosterone becomes lesser in the males, and female hormone estrogen, you can say, increases in the males, due to which the enlarged breast occurs in the males, you can say. So this diuretics may also cause the gynecomastia or large enlargement in the males, you can say. Erectile dysfunctioning, here this is the condition, you can call it as a impotence also. So erectile dysfunctioning is the inability to get and keep an erection form enough for the sex, you can say. So this is a condition where in the long term basis it may occur in the erectile dysfunctioning in the males may occur. Next condition, side effects which occur is a benign prostatic hyperplasia. We called it as BPH in the short form, also called as the prostate enlargement. Is a non-cancerous increase in the size of the prostate gland, where patient may experience frequent urination, trouble starting to urinate, weak stream, inability to urinate, or loss of bladder control. Okay, so this is in the males, benign prostatic hyperplasia, BPH. In the old age, many people are affected by, males are affected by this condition, you can say. So if this class is given for long term in the patient, you can say, it may produce this type of the side effect: acute renal failure and kidney stones. Okay, so we can't use this type of the drugs for long time, because it may produce a critical condition also. Next, we go for the drug interactions of potassium sparing diuretics. Okay, in common for all the drugs: triamterene, amiloride, spironolactone, eplerenone. So here salicylate may reduce the tubular secretion and decrease the diuretic efficiency of spironolactone. Okay, so spironolactone and salicylates, okay, they should not be given in combination, you can say, or in therapy, you can say. Spironolactone may alter the clearance of cardiac glycoside. So here the cardiac glycosides, that is decoxin and all that, so its clearance gets affected by the spironolactone, you can say. Amiloride and triamterene are contraindicated. Here the word contraindicated in patient with hyperkalemia, as well as in patient at increased risk of developing hyperkalemia. Example, the patient with renal failure, patient with receiving other potassium supplement diuretic, potassium sparing diuretics, you can say, patient taking angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitor, that is the ACE inhibitor, we have discussed in the first slide also of this class, or patient taking potassium supplements. Okay, so it is contraindicated. Okay, so this word you remember, those who are on the potassium supplements or the drug classes which increases the potassium level of the body, you can say. Potassium sparing diuretic given with angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitors or non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug NSAID, for example indomethacin, have been associated with severely elevated level of potassium hyperkalemia. Severe hyperkalemia may present as a muscle weakness, fatigue, and low heart rate, bradycardia. It is important to monitor potassium blood level as to have an electrocardiogram ECG performed. So this drug, which is elevating the potassium, as we have discussed earlier also, it is having a very critical condition like muscle weakness, fatigue, and heart rate is also affected. You can say ECG has to be done, potassium level, blood test has to be done continuously, what is the potassium level of the patient, etc. So this is how you can remember the important classes like ACE inhibitor and NSAID should not be given along with the potassium sparing diuretic, you can say. Now we go to the last slide of our discussion of this diuretic topic. It's a summary of diuretic. Okay, many students when they are preparing, okay, so many students are getting confused for the learning, you can say. Many chapters come across when they are going for examination. So if you have the summary of diuretics, which will help you to remember the important points also, that is the conclusion of our discussion today's, you can say, that is osmotic diuretic, where it act, okay, the proximal tubule, loop of Henle and collecting tubule. Mainly is the proximal convoluted tubule is the main site of action. The osmotic effect decreases sodium and water reabsorption, increases medullary blood flow, or decreases medullary hypertonic. So this is just the points we have taken. So you can just have one look where the mechanism of action is, you can remember, and the site of action we have taken. Carbonic anhydrase inhibitor, proximal convoluted tubule, inhibition of the renal carbonic anhydrase, decreases sodium bicarbonate reabsorption, you can say. Thiazide and thiazide-like cortical portion of the thick ascending limb of loop of Henle and distal tubule, inhibition of the sodium chloride symporter. Okay, loop or high ceiling diuretic, thick ascending limb of loop of Henle, inhibition of the luminal sodium, potassium and chloride symporter, you can remember. And lastly, the potassium sparing, which include the spironolactone or mineralocorticoid receptor inhibitors. Also, distal tubule or collecting tubule, inhibition of the sodium and water reabsorption by the competitive inhibition of aldosterone. Example bracket we have taken as spironolactone, and blockade of sodium channel at the luminal membrane, that is the triamterene and the amilorate. Okay, so here we have discussed the diuretic topic in a very small discussion. We have covered all the classes, also important points with respect to the introduction, with respect to the synonyms given to the class, with respect to the structures, main structures you can remember. Again you can remember the side effects of the classes, you can say. Main side effects you can remember, like gynecomastia for the spironolactone. This is only the drug which is producing that effect, you can say. So this is how you can have, and of course the drug interactions. Okay, main drug interactions you can remember. So this is what a diuretic topic we have covered. We try to cover the things. And lastly, requesting all the students to have the like for this video. Share this video with your friends, all the friends, you can say. Don't keep it with you itself. All the students make the use of this, because that is what the aim for the educational channel, that all the students have the simplification of the topic. And share this link and videos with your friends, so that they can be benefited also. And keep sharing on, and subscribe the channel, and press the bell icons, because many new videos are coming regarding the topics, you can say, which will be very simple. And it itself you can make the notes from this video, you can say. So subscribe also, and press the bell icon. And also you can have the comments for this video, so that we can improve in the next videos also. So soon you will be getting the new video. So like, share, subscribe, and press the bell icon. So thank you very much. Thank you for listening patiently. So here we stop.